Hi, this is Greg Kilstrom. Welcome to Season 3 of the Agile World, where we discuss customer and employee experience, organizational and workforce transformation, and how business can adapt and continually improve in an agile age. The Agile World podcast is brought to you by TEKsystems, an industry leader in full-stack technology services, talent services, and real-world application. For more information, go to teksystems.com. To read more about the topics discussed in this show, you can go to my website at theagile.world and read my latest articles, or get a copy of my latest book, The Agile Workforce, now available on Amazon and other retailers. My name is Greg Kilstrom, and I'm the host of the Agile World podcast. Welcome to a special episode of the show brought to you in partnership with Arlington Economic Development, where we discuss issues related to the workforce, the role of place in the future of work, and the role of the creative sector in a larger business context. We call this Return on Creativity. Today, we're going to talk about educating the workforce to adapt and plan for the future of work. This includes upskilling and reskilling to outpace automation, introducing no-code resources to the current workforces, and ensuring companies can adapt to the hybrid work environment. To help me discuss this topic, I'd like to welcome Charlie Oliver, founder and CEO of Tech 2025 and Serve Trust Media. Charlie, welcome to the show.
Hi, Greg. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, welcome back. You're a returning champion here, so thanks for coming back.
I
Always
want
like
a
talking with
T-shirt that says that, returning
nice.
champion.
I'll have to whip those up. But, remind me later. So let's start off topic that everybody's talking about and lots of different perspectives here. And I know you have an event coming up here soon on the topic as well. But return to the office. So. How do you define hybrid workforce? And do you think this is something that's gonna stick around for quite some time?
Well, that is the billion-dollar question, isn't it? That's probably the question that everyone in the world is asking, but that no one has an answer to, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty profound. My social media feeds, LinkedIn and Twitter and even Instagram are filled with comments and posts by people who are either anxiety ridden about not knowing what's going to happen, managers who are trying to figure things out. I mean, it's everyone is debating this topic. It's exhilarating in a way, right? Because we're in uncharted territory. So
Yeah.
anyone who tells you that they know exactly what's going to happen, I would probably say run in the other direction.
Right.
Unless they have a proven track record of predicting. But how do we
Yeah.
define the hybrid workforce? That is a question that we're going to be answering over the next year to 2 years. There's no industry consensus really beyond the idea that obviously includes a workforce that is working partially from home and partially from the office. I think that much everyone can agree on. Now, to what degree, and how that happens and what will work and won't work, any person's guess. And it's pretty fascinating to see so many different models that are being tested right now by so many different companies, especially the big companies. And I'm talking about the enterprise companies that have, for the past year and a half, been contemplating this, and they have the resources to sort of test and implement different ideas. I'm seeing it even amongst them that there is almost like a fear of having to move forward and leave behind what they've become comfortable with. Right.
Yeah.
So companies like JP Morgan and Netflix and everything who are saying there's no way we're going to let our workforce work from home. It's everyone back to the office. It's pretty interesting to see that play out.
Yeah. 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 I mean, do you think? There's a lot of companies kind of in the middle of some kind of mix and I guess more hybrid, so to speak. But there's been a few companies. You mentioned a couple, and on the JP Morgans of the world saying everybody's going back to the office. There's the Twitters of the world that are like, everybody stay home. I mean, I can't help but think that both of those extremes are going to end up somewhere in towards the middle in a year or two. I mean,
Mhm.
it just kind of leads me to what you said. It's just there is no one right answer, but is the answer a million different things and it's company by company, or do you think we'll kind of standardize over some period of time?
That is a great question. And, if I had to go by, I mean, let's look at two things here, which is really important. That's the needs of the employees and the needs of the company. And then well, three things, the needs of the customers too, right? That's
Yeah, yeah,
important. Um, the thing about it is for the first time ever, really for the first time ever, employees are in a position where they can say, nah, I don't think so. This is not,
yeah.
it's pretty fascinating because the power dynamic, while of course they don't hold all of the power dynamic has shifted so much in the past year. I mean, you have an entire workforce that's been working from home. And for those many, many years that we've been telling ourselves it can't work working from home, or that job or those tasks can't be done sitting in your living room, you have to come to the office. We now know that that is not the case.
Right.
And which when you think about it, talking about companies that are sort of going to either probably land in the middle of this, not be necessarily so extreme to one end or the other. um, Google today, they today just announced that they're sort of backtracking on. Sundar Pichai said, the whole back to office thing. you know, remember when I said, you know, 4 weeks ago, we're going to be hearing that a
Right.
lot. Yeah, right. We're going to be hearing that a lot from executives in the next year. Remember when I said, well, so
Right.
he's
Right.
announcing, you know what? That's the whole, we can't force people who have been traumatized by a global pandemic for the past year to fit into a culture that doesn't exist anymore. We
Right.
cannot. But we also can't tell them what that culture is now or is going to be. So, really, for the first time ever, companies have to allow employees to decide what that work culture is. And it's exhilarating and it's also absolutely frightening. It's terrifying for them. And
Yeah.
it is, but it's an opportunity, right? And so I have myself, I mean, I don't know if you've been seeing my feeds or anything, but I've been pretty critical of, you have to be empathetic. Everyone
Yeah.
has to be empathetic here, right? But I've been somewhat critical of the Jamie Dimons of the world, especially the CEO of Goldman Sachs, who just said, everybody back in the office in 4 weeks, and
Yeah.
2020 was an apparition. Any executive who's saying 2020 was an apparition, I would get as far away from them as I possibly can.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
they've got to take bold moves. The pandemic has given us permission to be as bold and as, like audacious and creative as we want to be. Now, I know we still have to keep business running. We don't want to disrupt upon disrupt, right? But at the same time, if we allow the opportunity that's given to us at this moment, if we allow that opportunity to slip away, we will never get this right.
Yeah, agreed. And I mean, I think the to what you said earlier, we've we the collective we, I guess, have proved to the world that business can go on. Like
Right.
I haven't been tracking, the stock prices of those, specific companies you mentioned, but
Right.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say they haven't suffered too much during the pandemic. And so in other words, it's kind of proving them wrong, and that
Right.
work can't be done out of the office. I mean, I can empathize with the idea of like, isn't it nice to have like apples to apple? Like, think of an HR person these days. It's like, it's nice to be able to say, well, we have 3 weeks paid time off, we have this, we have
Mhm.
that, 1 day telework. The things become standard pretty
Right.
quick in at companies. 40 hour work weeks. I mean, you think that's been around forever. It actually hasn't been around that long, but we get so
Mhm.
used to these things. So I get the idea that like, oh my god, now we've got to like think completely different, or
Right.
it could be different per office, it could be different per
Mhm.
person. There's plenty of ethical issues there as well. So like, I get the idea that wouldn't it be nice if we could just make things simpler? But to your other point, we're not going back. Like, we can't go back.
Well, you
And
can't go back.
yeah,
You can,
yeah,
and not only that, let's call a spade here. We're in the position that we're in now because we haven't been innovating as much as we
Yeah.
should be and taking the opportunities to do it, even though we've had the tools. We've had these tools for years now,
Yeah.
and yet we're still working people like they're dogs.
Right.
This past year, people were breaking down. I mean, shoot, Goldman Sachs was actually having a difficult time. They had employees actually come out, analysts come out and say, listen, we're at our breaking point here. Like, we can't
Yeah.
do this. That culture of overworking and just working until you like send yourself into an early grave, that is distinctly American.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that
Yeah.
there aren't other countries that, but that is definitely a hallmark of our workforce. I mean, and to a degree, it's partially why we're so innovative, right? Like, that whole hustle mentality in Silicon Valley that has been exported to the rest of the world. That whole like hustle until
Right.
you can't do it anymore. Um, that's got to change. And the fact of the matter is that has been our poison as much as it has been our pride and joy, right? And
Yeah.
so the idea that we would want to go back to that there's no other way, that people who were last year sacrificing. They were sitting at home. They were trying to figure out how to make it with their families, their people with kids, their interns.
Yeah.
Everyone was at home making sacrifices, figuring out how to make things work. They busted their behinds to keep these companies running. And to your
Right.
point, not only did they not really lose money, they actually saved the money and they made money. So
Yeah.
the idea, the absolute gall of any executive to say right now, we can't. We really can't.
Right.
Oh, oh,
Right.
you should be ashamed of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, no, no, I think it's a great point. Well, let's switch topics a little bit here. I could go on that subject for quite a while longer, but let's switch a
Easily.
little bit because I want to cover a few things with you here. So,
Okay.
upskilling the workforce, and
Mhm.
this is something that I know Tech 2025 does a lot of great work in and stuff, and I want you to get to some of the stuff that you're doing there. But just first, like, why is there so much talk about upskilling, and why do you think it's so important?
Well, we're in an era where we are, I launched Tech 2025 in January of 2017. Okay. In 2016, I was already having clients say to me, and these are clients of enterprise companies, these are executives and managers, really begin to communicate to me then that they were really concerned that they would not, number one, that they didn't understand the potential of the technologies, right? I mean, AI,
Yeah.
machine learning, the cognitive technologies, this is we are basically remaking our world into you know, realities that we thought we can only do in Hollywood, right? Like we now,
Yeah.
and we're
Yeah.
putting that power into the hands of ordinary people, of employees, of it. So I was hearing back then in 2016, whoa, what's going to happen? How are we going to really turn our organizations around and sort of make them do the digital transformation in a way that's going to help us to thrive, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's a quote from, oh boy, I think he was the former CEO of Cisco. This was in 2015. And this was his sort of last, I think it was like his retirement speech that he gave at a conference. And please forgive me if I'm getting this wrong, but I'm pretty sure that I'm attributing it to the right person. Anyway, he said that 40% of the companies that existed then in, was it 2015, wouldn't exist anymore, would go out of business
Mm.
by 2025.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
And by 2019 or 2018, this was well underway. What no one is talking about is the fact that between companies being unable or unwilling, as the pandemic has shown. It wasn't that they were unable or didn't have the
Right.
resources. They were just unwilling to do it. Most companies, I mean, it was something like only 20% of the companies in America were really aggressively pursuing a digital transformation strategy over the last 3 or 4 years. But for those companies that were unwilling to do so early, what the pandemic has shown us and has proven this executive to be accurate in his prediction, these companies are going to go under.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is we're hurtling towards a point of no return, whereby by 2025, if your organization hasn't substantively and strategically implemented um, d- digital technologies throughout the organization, empowered your employees. If you don't have that in order by 2025, you're probably on the downside of. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
want to. Right,
Yeah.
right. And so a big part of that is, and what I used to say to my clients back in 2016, when I saw literally a look of fear on their face, like literally, Charlie, what is this? What's going to happen? I would say to them, well, that depends on how you're talking to your employees about it. What are you
Yeah.
saying to your employees up and down the chain, from the mailroom to the innovation teams in your even your board? Like, what's the conversation going on and around these technologies, and are you preparing them? And so that's why I launched Tech 2025, because I knew that this was an imperative. It's not an option. It's, if you don't get your employees up to speed, you're going under. And
Right.
it might
Right.
be a gradual decline. It's not going to be an instant thing. You'll just see it fade away pretty much. But here's the other thing. Here's what makes it really challenging, and why I think, to a tremendous degree, companies, for a number of reasons though, but this one primarily, have been so lax. Well, number one, we get comfortable, right? We
Yeah.
see money coming in, we think we're doing well and whatever. But also, we have spent the last 30 years telling people, and especially Silicon Valley has spent the last 30 years telling ordinary people that they're too dumb to understand complicated technology.
Mm. Yeah.
You can't, let's just simplify this for you. Don't even, like, I mean, we and that's not a bad thing that they sort of make the technology simple, but the culture of innovation that has put America at the top of innovation in this world is the same culture that has told women and people of color and everyone else who didn't go to Stanford that they aren't in the club.
Yeah.
So we're paying
Yeah.
the price for that. So now companies have to figure out how to undo that, how to actually get people to see, yeah, we've got to do this. And the whole point of it is, I mean, to get back to your question, is that they're racing against time. So you've got companies like Amazon making these big pledges where, just 2 years, a year and a half ago, Amazon said, listen, we're going to spend $700 million to reskill and upskill, I think it's what, 200,000 of their employees. Well, little did
Yeah.
they know that they would be hiring another 100,000 a year later because of the pandemic.
Right.
So now it's
Right. So
even
they're
more of an
already outpaced by reality,
I
basically. Yeah.
exactly. So it's not even
Yeah.
it's hard to imagine that there is a bigger um more pressing goal right now than getting
Yeah.
people up to speed. Listen, in 2016, Craig Schmidt and Sebastian Throne co-authored an article. I think it was in Forbes or Fortune. And the whole tone of this article was actually the impetus for me even thinking about doing something and realizing, okay, we got a problem here, because the article was basically them responding to um, Elon Musk and the late Stephen Hawking, who are tech dystopianists. Right? The
Yeah.
article was
Yeah.
saying, listen, we got this. Stop being such worrywarts about AI and everything. We are building the future, and it's going to make life better for everyone. And I thought to myself, ain't this something? These two billionaires, they have enough money to go sit in the middle of the planet on their money, when, if everything does go to crap, right?
Right.
But they
Right.
don't want to even consider that maybe we should be preparing for the people who need to figure out how to transition. And that's just ordinary people. So anyway, to your
Yeah.
point, that's what I'm talking about, right? It's like, and I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's essentially, the audacity of a couple people to say, yeah, we
Right.
got this, versus democratizing. And I mean, from a very pragmatic standpoint, it's kind of, it's foolish to do that, because you're leaving out what percentage? I mean, what
Mhm.
you're leaving out so many people that could have potential to do, game changing stuff, and you're kind of relegating it to to a small group of people. And I think that's where, next thing I wanted to talk about was this concept of like no code, and this more, some of these technologies that do democratize creation and innovation and stuff like that. Where do you see things like no code going, and do you think that could be an answer to some of these challenges that companies are having?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up because I actually had a client. We had a client at Surface Media. Oh my God, 3 years. This was actually just before or around the time I launched Tech 2025, and it was a no coding platform, one of the older legacy ones that has been around for decades. And so we were in charge of their entire North American marketing, PR, push. And so I talked to a lot of their clients, their customers, which were enterprise companies, but also their communities, their development communities about using, no code and low code and everything. And so I was sort of immersed in that culture before it really popped off in 2000, well, in 2020, right? The
Yeah.
pandemic actually is forcing companies to automate very quickly. Um, and it's really interesting because even back then I said, well, this is great, but there's a big chasm between what it is and what it can be used and
Yeah.
how it will be, sort of ingrained into the fabric of corporate culture as a tool that will increase productivity and get to the bottom line, right? And so, to your point, this another, if you want to call it silver lining of the pandemic, is that yeah, companies realize that hey, we need these, we've got to get people to understand that they can do this, right? And it's a great thing. I think the problem is, which is usually the case when it comes to implementing technology into the productivity process in a way that is unfamiliar, is that the problem isn't getting people to understand how to use the technology. It's getting them to incorporate it as a tool of creativity for solving problems that they have historically been told they are unqualified
Mm.
to solve.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. And I'll give you an example of what I mean. And this is a really quick one. We did an event at Tech 2025. This was 1 month before the pandemic happened. So last January, February. And it was an event that was about companies upskilling, but the top companies like PCW and Amazon and everything. And these were the companies that have pledged like a million at least, well, more than
Yeah.
that actually. Some of them have pledged a lot more than that to get their workforce up to speed. However, the Wall Street Journal wrote an article basically saying it's not really working, right?
Mm.
Like for all of
Yeah.
the money they're putting towards this, half a billion or whatever, it's not, there's something that's not connecting, and they're not necessarily seeing the results that they want with regards to employees um, using these skills and taking the skills and uh, applying them in a way that's either by getting new jobs or one. So I guess
Yeah.
my point in all of that is I asked the audience at this event, which was maybe 40% technologists and the rest were non-techie people. I said, raise your hand, please, if you think that your job is going to be partially or fully automated before or by 2025. Only one hand went up.
Huh.
And this is a room full of technologists, software engineers, developers, da da da.
Yeah.
And we had the
Yeah.
marketers and the product people or whatever. Only one hand went up, and it was an accountant. I said, "You're an
Wow.
accountant." You don't, and she says, "Yeah, I know my job's." So there is there's a cognitive dissonance there because I asked
Yeah.
that question in a number of ways, and we were all shocked. My panel and everyone, we were shocked that there's a cognitive dissonance that people have about whether or not they are even going to be partially or fully automated out of a job. If you change
Yeah.
the conversation to tell them, listen, okay, I mean, we've got to, you've got to understand what automation is going to mean. No, it's not going to necessarily put everyone out of a job, but things are changing and you have to be a part of that change. If we change that conversation, as opposed to it being just about creating products that helps the company get to the bottom line, begin to sort of broaden that view,
Yeah.
I think companies would be more effective. And that's what we do here at Tech 2025. We help them to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's it definitely takes companies making investments and offering tools, but I mean, to your point, it's co- companies and individuals. I think the companies need to help teach this. It's a mindset, right? Because I mean, I think
Right.
it's a you know it's to me it's about the same as me saying I'm not a math person. Is I can't use technology to help make my job easier. It's to me
Mhm.
it's kind of the same thing where I think that a lot of people need to start thinking of their future job as
Right.
managing AI and not like
Exactly.
their direct report is going to be a machine or some algorithm in a computer. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I
Right.
think that actually lets humans do what humans are actually better. I mean, the original computer
Right.
was a human, not the term computer comes from someone computing, not a machine.
Right.
So like we're not supposed to be computers. So
Right.
there's a happy medium somewhere in there, I think.
Well, we have to explore it. And to your point, the thing that annoyed me the most about that letter, excuse me, about that article that Sebastian Throne and Craig Schmidt wrote, and the ethos, they pretty much were echoing the ethos of, like, tech utopianists, right, in Silicon
Yeah.
Valley, which is, it's going to be wonderful, don't worry about it. And not only are people not going to lose jobs, they may lose their jobs, or their job tasks, but they're going to be freed up to do more creative things. Okay,
Yeah.
well, here's the deal. Why don't you tell me what those creative things are? Okay, because you make it sound like that's something that people automatically know what or how to do. I mean,
Yeah.
you tell somebody who's
Good
been
point.
doing an automated task as a human being, I've been like processing this paperwork for the past 20 years or 10 years or whatever. And then you say, you know what, I'm going to take this from you and now you can do more creative things. What? What
Right.
is that?
Right.
Okay.
What is that?
What do you
But
like?
and
Like,
that goes to the person that says I'm not a creative person.
exactly.
Well,
It's
which that's a
right.
whole other topic. But yeah.
No, but no, but that is the point. It's not
Yeah.
another topic. That is the very point. It goes back to the culture that we have instilled in our children and ourselves, that
Yeah.
the creative fields don't belong in tech, even though we know that that's not true, or
Yeah.
or
Good
that
point.
only certain people can be creative. Only artists can be creative. Go, they paint, they draw, they see the world, and that's a lie. We're all creative in our own way. The problem is that it's just like anything else, like a muscle. If you don't help people to explore their creativity, to understand, and that is not something that someone can tell you. I can't tell you, Greg, what your creative output is.
Right.
I can only give you tools and say, hey, listen, you might want to check this out. You get to explore that for yourself. That's supposed to be the beauty of life and figuring out who and what we are. So the problem that I have with the companies, and why I even launched Tech 2025, and what I think companies don't necessarily see in how they upskill, right, is that you can't just take the tools away and give them new tools and think that it's going to be, you know, a
Yeah.
snap. You have to help people to understand. I mean, just because people are given no code tools doesn't mean that they're going to be inspired enough and so inclined to take the initiative to create new solutions. A lot of
Yeah.
people might feel like, I don't need this. What do I need this? What
Right. Right.
you
Now they're like delegating like programming to me, and
right? You want
again,
me to
it's the I'm not a
wait?
programmer.
It's
Yeah.
above my pay grade, dude. I can't.
Right.
That's not me. That goes to IT. Right,
Yeah.
right,
Right.
right, right.
Right.
But there is a way that you can turn around, and it has everything to do with culture. And I just think that with 3.5 years left to go to 2025, and a workforce that is going to churn like butter. I mean, the churn is already starting to happen. We're seeing
Yeah.
in our feed, I'm seeing in my feed, people saying, I know of so many people who are quitting their jobs. Research says 1 in 4 people are going to quit or going to change companies within the next several months.
Yeah. Yeah. I believe it. Well, one last question before we wrap up. Tech 2025. One of the things I love about the programs that that you do is that there's this experiential learning component. So it's not just a there's a lots of courseware out there. There's lots of things like that, but really getting not only dialogue but
Mhm.
interaction and things like that. Why do you think this type of learning is so powerful? And what is Tech 2025? What's on your horizon that you're going to be able to offer to reach more people and impact some of these things that we're talking about here?
Well, thank you. Thank you for that, Greg. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, of
um,
course.
but, experiential is everything. And we've learned throughout the pandemic that we've taken for granted the very idea of experience. That, it's not enough to be able to just sit in a room and to just sit on a laptop or to just do your work. That we took for granted that, wow, I miss being outside. I miss every little thing that contributed to my creativity and to my ability to be productive that I didn't realize before, right? And so we are now primed right now to receive experiences and learning that push the boundaries of what we understood or thought of before. And that includes with technologies, new technologies like augmented reality. Well, not that that technology is new, but you know what I'm saying? New
Yeah,
sort of virtual experiences that I know companies are experimenting with, which is great. That's definitely the future. But an experience doesn't have to be something that's grand, right? An experience can really be the most profound experiences are the ones that take you deeper into your own self or deep into the experience of another person, right?
yeah,
Because then we
yeah.
get to empathize with other people in a way that we probably will. So, to that end, we have been doing that at Tech 2025 for years. And it's not anything that's necessarily very complicated, but we do really try, and I'm told we're pretty darn good at
Mhm. You
asking.
are.
Oh, thank you. Asking, part of the experience is asking people the hard questions that no one
Yeah,
else will, and that they might try or maybe have been trying to avoid, and
yeah,
forcing them to come together. And it's not even a hard force. When you get people together, they will naturally want to understand how each other is thinking, but getting them to understand that they have to sort of go deeper than what they're asked to do in the office. And what we have learned is we have seen some incredible things come out of that. We have heard incredible stories from people. We've seen people launch companies from these experiences that we create. And it's pretty shocking because I'm like, whoa, I should get a cut of that, right?
right,
What's your
right.
company, right? Can I get some stock and some shares? What's going no? But
Nice.
the idea is that we are all primed now to experience things that we may not have been primed to do before. And so what we're doing with companies, which is has been the goal since day one, is we are helping them to understand how to push the boundaries of experiential learning in a way that serves all stakeholders, but
Yeah,
most importantly, the employees who need and want to do more. That's the
yeah.
thing. They need and want to do. They come to us in our events outside of work and they tell me all the time, Charlie, I'm a product manager, I'm a manager this, I do this. I don't get asked to do the things that you're asking me, that you're saying in these events. So, yeah, let's stop downplaying people and dumbing down, and let's uplift
Yeah.
them and give them the opportunity to really help innovate.
That's great. That's great. Well, Charlie, thanks so much for joining the show. I wish we could talk for a bit longer, but no, thanks for joining. So, for those listening, how do they keep up with what you're doing and stay in touch with you?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Greg. So I am for me personally, you can follow me on Twitter at It's Complicated. Definitely, I connect with people on LinkedIn as well. So I'm Charlie Oliver NY on LinkedIn. To follow Tech 2025 and what we're doing, you can go to the website, tech2025.com. Sign up for the newsletter. We have a newsletter called Fast Forward. We have some great events and courses that we're launching in the next month. We have an event coming up at the end of the month that I'm excited about. And that's on No Code. No, that one is on. Oh, what is that one on, Greg? Oh, geez, I don't even remember. This is terrible. Oh, that one is on 2025. On what's
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
have some
Sorry, yeah.
predictions.
I should
Sorry.
know the answer to that.
No,
Sorry.
I should know the answer to that. But if you want to follow us in social media, it's at Join Tech 2025 across all platforms. So that's Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, again, I'd like to thank Charlie Oliver for joining the show. To learn more about Return on Creativity, brought to you by Agile World and Arlington Economic Development, please go to returnoncreativity.com. Thanks for listening to the Agile World with Greg Kihlstrom. See you next week. Thanks again for listening to the Agile World podcast, brought to you by Tech Systems. I'm your host, Greg Kihlstrom. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to subscribe on your podcast channel of choice and leave us a rating so that others can find the show more easily. You can learn more and get a copy of my latest book, The Agile Workforce, from my website at theagile.world.